Nam Dene Da Chen San Chu Tar Sene Yuan Den Lu Zo Jal Se Tu Be Ko Chu Cha Chu Dan Chu Nian Gen Te Ta Lu Men Sel Jambe Yang La Tu Omara Bazana De Omara Bazana De Omara Bazana De Omara Bazana Marabazana deo 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 mara Omarabazana de Omarabazana Zenden jen 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 raba sere jen talen tin moi memba rab sala nen kandan ten che shun lo ton pa ye lo che po be nam wa Zalando solo kanse tavaran de pam chung se tivaran de naya Gombo jamyan chen ne keme pan tong war shu Ningje chenpe che de nime shen sung ne me lam chenpo nga ja tam pe gara dar ngan chen de chermen do tenpa tu je chen la chang ca lo wu jen so long pe me dong bo le jal we nam tu le rang shen lun je chu chen zo pe che yuen den so pa ra wa pe ma chung ne ta le pe so roi chung Lu zhub to me arya dewa dang yin nye cho lang che je zhao bei xia yuan den yue dang xiang jie yue lang so jian zhu chong nian nam la so lo wan de Ma yue zeng ge gang ge rik bi me se de long nian cang zeng gun se yang jiang bei pa yu le tu zhe gun ye pa rong sum che je sang bo jia le ju ru chi Gang li teo ka la rin chen ning bei ngo lo yuan den gun zhong ga yue jie ca lan du ning bei dun du bei bei nan zhu ru pa long chen ram jiam xiam la so lo wan de bei Ri dong jiam pa le xu nu chen la le gong bei long ne po bei de jie zhou long du quan zun jiang cong nga wang ju Mi pam jiam yang nam jia la so lo wan de bei Hong min qu ji yin jie po zhang ne du sum sang jie gun jie nga wo ni Rang sum chu kuru ngu sum dun zi pa Tsa we la me shab la so lo wan de be Te yang zhuwa nam ki ta dan yan be sim jen tam je du nga le yun de Nye dang chal de top ja lan na me pa yang tak par zog be sang je ji ko pang rin po che la ko par ji wo Te yi che do tam be chu de nye sen jen Sur shin do nyam su lang war ji wo Nyam be sam pa chang ju chong do tu ke pa rin po che Sal ta be gu ne sem par shu Gang sem par cha we chu ge rin pa ni Kibi tsula jubi go she chawi tenjo tinye yinbaren de la yang kebara chawi ne chu chugi domshi soso yang dabre rikwa shi gune yoba le tangbo kebara chawi ne chu de la yang pungbo kam geche tendil ne dan nemin wangbo duyusin shu tibne tanda demba la kebas demba de la yang demba shiri tang ne padang din demba shiri re kola sungu yoba le tanda tene lamgi demba ikola le de yus At the
beginning of class, please give rise to bodhicitta thinking, may all sentient beings, who are as numerous as the sky is vast, attain a state that is free from suffering and the causes for suffering. And may all those sentient beings be established at the level of perfect and complete Buddhahood, the ultimate result. In order to facilitate that, may I now study and then put the teachings correctly into practice. With that kind of motivation, please engage in your studies. The text that we're studying in this class is The Gateway to Knowledge. The treatise is entitled The Gate for Entering the Way of a Pandita by Jamgon Mipam Rinpoche. And generally, the text is outlined by 3 main sections. First come the 10 topics of expertise, then the 4 seals of Dharma, and finally the fourfold correct discrimination. We are currently discussing the first one of those three, the 10 topics of expertise, and we have already covered a number of topics of expertise, the becoming learned and the aggregates and the elements, the sense sources, interdependence, the correct and the incorrect, the faculties, and time. And we're currently discussing the 8th topic, which is to become learned, to become an expert in the truths. And in the discussion of the Four Noble Truths, here we have reached now the truth of the path, and we will continue today from where we have left off yesterday.
네. 강 제모 톱네 대편제 록대 계좌 체바 남양 미중라스 jorlam기 제모 셰바데 톱나 대편제라 되네 레준데 시네 당 챙아치 메바르다와 데다 록다 안디 임발라테네 되네 체다 체바르다와 무디 양편벽이 루소도 레준데 챙아치 메라소바 딘데기 록다 딘데 중요요 말이스 디 임발라테네 아니 계좌 체바 나면 미중라스 소토 소바토 편제 년송도 미두오세 다 졸람 다 촉람라 랍 촉람 랍 사비제네 졸람라 톱 졸람 톱 사비제란 졸람 낭니 강 아니 졸람 소바 셰바디 톱투나 대편제 되네 년송도 자원년에 게 고고요 말에스네 단디네 송에 단디 조데 계자체에 가르스나 아니 록다 계교로 단디네 년송도 계라 녀몽 rakpa dinde yora ta tanda duru soba jolam soba topson na jolam soba topson na ji suma rangshin meba 칠월 게 나와 된소 탐제 랑심기 왕기 낭삼 마도비 아니 지 체로라 메스 디 메바참 마셰베기 셈대양 셈 코롱양 아니 랑시 마두바 인사레 삼베 딘데기 랑시 마두바 레도와 다우 삼바기 딘데기 레도와 삼바도 딘데 던지기 주니 던지 추도라 노라 깨기레스 춘 추기 내루 던지 추도 똑게레스네 딘데 송사 사가상 어디 인도갑라 춘이기 된데 던지 추도 또네 송아랑시 메바 또네 셈자랑시 메바 딘데 던지 출도 동용도 갑del라 춘이 돈을 써봐도 디 김선나 때는 연송도 깨고요 말이스 미도
So we are on page 144, the last paragraph, 12-13. For someone who has attained the summit, henceforth wrong views that cut the roots of virtue will never occur. Having attained acceptance, one will never go to the lower realms. So if one has reached the second level of the path of joining, which is called summit, that then means that one will actually not develop wrong views anymore that would cut through the roots of virtue. That means that one does not develop the kind of wrong view that one thinks, oh, karma, cause and effect is not true, that there is no law, causal law, or to completely disbelieve in previous and later lives and results of those. And so, in short, to develop wrong views, like nihilistic views, like those of the far throwers, Charvakas, for example, that will not come about anymore when one has reached the summit stage on the path of joining. And then subsequently, on the stage of acceptance, one will not have to be reborn in the lower realms anymore. Actually, these two are connected to each other. If those wrong views are not present anymore, then one will refrain from the coarse expressions of the afflictive emotions and negative actions. And so one will not engage in the coarse kind of the coarse kinds of negativities, and will not experience the coarse kinds of afflictive emotions that are necessary for rebirth in the lower realms within samsara. So this is because at the stage of acceptance, one has actually understood that the different kinds of outer appearances, the different kinds of things that and objects that one experiences are mere appearances within one's own mind. They don't exist in that way as truly established outer objects. And not only that, one also, by the stage of acceptance, also understands that even the mind itself is not truly established either. So being free from both the grasping to the apprehended and the apprehender, or not being free, but having understood the absence of the apprehended outer objects and the apprehending mind, then one has gained an intellectual understanding of it, very deep understanding of it, in form of a mental image that arises in the mind at that point. So one knows the nature of phenomena in form of this mental image. And because of that, one actually will not engage in actions that lead to rebirths in the lower realms. So from the stage of acceptance onwards, one will never go to the lower realms.
디젤라 아니 통람네스 다 춘이게 덴바데 nga ma thongwa unsumdo sardu thongwena thonglam스 디다고 통람데네 나 최적의 주도 산 졸람 최적 졸람의 에너지라 디 시와되게 최적되게 주도도 세네 다 졸람 쇠바감네 코롱 쇠바단 최적된 적감네 코롱 치 송화 랑셴메 바마세베 낭 짐베 셈데야 랑셴메 바 던지 출돌라 또로 다 단다도루 통람 용데 갑라 문수 송진니가 아니 랑셴메 랑셴게 미믹신 랑셴게 마두바니도 똑신 남 된 넘버 메도베 띵에 젠당 아니 띵에 젠당 송화 랑셴 메바 짐바 랑셴메 최탐제 랑셴 메바데 디 셰네 셰랍 디니 총바르다 덴베스 춘이게 덴바스 춘이게 덴바스 송진이가 랑신 메바 임발라 임바 춘이 칸임바데 덴바 무슨도 스바오스 딜 셰스게 이시케지 주족도 개발아 되데스 통람갑라 아니 셰바 계당 아니 쇠바 계치네 통람게 이시케지 주족스네 덴데스네 되게여스 다티 강셰나스 안티네 말리고도.
And now we move on to the path of seeing. The path of seeing is the direct perception of the truth of Dhamma through non-conceptual concentration, concurrent with discriminating knowledge that immediately follows supreme attribute. So when we speak about the path of seeing, this really describes the direct realization of that which has not been directly seen before. So the first direct realization of the truth of Dhamma, of the nature of things that one has not seen in that way, in this direct way before. At the stages of acceptance and supreme attribute, one has developed an understanding, a deep understanding of the absence of apprehended and apprehender, so that one understands that the duality of apprehender and apprehended is not established in the way that we think it is. So neither that which we perceive nor the perceiver are truly established in their own right. And so that has been understood in form of a mental image on these later two stages of the path of joining. But now, on the path of seeing, that nature, the truth of how things truly are, that they are empty of an inherent nature, is directly realized, is directly perceived vividly and clearly, like a direct experience rather than an indirect experience due to a mental image. So that is then the realization that both where the practitioner sees that both apprehended and apprehender are not truly established. And so it is held that the 16 moments of the wisdom of cognition and acceptance arise at this point. What are they? So there are 6 moments of wisdom of cognition, and there are 8. There are 8 moments of wisdom of cognition and 8 moments of wisdom of acceptance that arise on the path of seeing, or that are usually described when we talk about the path of seeing. And now we look at what these actually refer to.
주주부대는 간시나 동al 최시비 수바다 직 동al 최시바 니 동al 제수 시비 수바 숨 동al 제수 시바스는 시치 디 동al 템발의 시도 다나 신체네 군중 템발의 시 고비 템발의 시 람기 템발의 시 진 어디에서는 주루레스 손에 되네 나 강시나스 당보데 동알라 최시비 수바당스 딱 당보디데 드비캄게 동알 템바 다나주 동알 템바스나 친유게 직대다 나주게 섬전될 동알 템만나 샤임바 딜라 랑단지 친이 셰바 세 최셰바 세 랑단지 친이 최셰바 딜라 수바 랑기 친이데 치 직대당 나주게 섬전도 탐자 둘체레레레레레산에 쇠샤바 잠시마도비 코 랑문에 둘럽도 주바 메바데 아니 랑기 친이 지 친이서나 아니 친유게 직대다 나주게 섬전도 탐자 양 미다바 동알와 동바 다메바 랑신임바디 지 친이레스 오디니데라 최 된조 셰신 쇠바스 랑단지 친인데 셰신 쇠바스 다나조 데 최데 셰마토 랑단지 친인데 셰마토 쇠바 곰하토나 가려르스나 랑기 친인데 셰마토나 베나 친유기 직대나 주기 선지 공부 수부승인지 락바지 여도도 라우지 통교레스 아니 다는 쇠바 곰하토네 되네 딜라 착바 셰당와 라소바게 된 잔년다 년년된 얘기요래선 다 단다 두루 통람 다 졸람 촉람 졸람 통람 된데스네 람라 장용데 갈라 베나 동알 최시비 소바스 다두루 데비 감기 되네 동알 덴바 된졸라 랑단지 친이 셰신 된딜라 아니 다 랑신 메바 랑단지 친이게 랑신지 임바 덴바르 메바 미다 동아 동비타니 임바 된데 퇴섬지 고네 된딜라 지 하고와 딜라 쇠바검투와 쇠바검투와서나 미다베 랑신 따투바 다메베 랑신도 따투바 오 된데치나 어디 명라 쇠바스 쇠바스 다디디 쇠바디 명라 야강라 텐직 디 명라 가릴레브레 바르체 멜람스 디안 레브라디 명라 야강라 텐직 레임바 더 추시비 쇠바나 그래 명직라 양 바르체 멜람스 다 바르체 멜람스나 랑당 지 체니니디 헤와라 다 빠루라 드네 줌신 신기 바르체 메바라 다 줌신 가르레스나 뭐고 탐제 랑기 체니데 랑신 메바지 둘 차랍 초과점 레두 람나 다 다랑 임발라 다지 시에되게라디 다둘 차랍 초과네 말에라기 바르체 가야 메르 서바세데 다둘 차랍 초과라 때네 중화 레도와 삼바 고네 다딜라 서바 검토하라 다나제 지 체니데 미다바 동바 다메바 미다 동알 미다 동알 동바 다음에 배상신 그러봐 어디 임바텔라 이체 개바 어디라 쇠바 세다 데비 감기 동알 덴발라 아니 이제 쇠바 데밍라 아니 동알 쉐바당 동알 쇠바라비스 다는 신기 데비 감기 동알 덴바데라 네 서바 잠도 마세베기 서바 잠 마세베기 추기네로 강이바 디가나 균네 투바 다 추시바라 디 추게 찍라 남돌 람스나라기도 다 당보 베샤샤나디 디 추시비 갑델라 아니 이제 차오당 정문이 투교라오라 아니 디 동알 최시바 생디 갑라 강롱직 갈송와 톱송와 자오지 어때도 갑라 당보 랑당 지 체니 대당 아니 디다 미튠바데 답에나 랑게 체니디 둘도 줘바데 라다 둘도 줘바 말이 공부랑 신레 삼바 디니 당보 투교래디 최시비 서밤 바르샤멜람 갑라 디 남로 람세디 갈라 오 지 랑기 체니스는 돌도 주발에 룹잠마도비 무스 주바시 한 미도아세 추디 동알데비랑 신데 미다바 동알와 동비 다음에비랑 신 레도아 삼데 두루 깨지니발라 무투니 네투바 남돌 람세 디기 제우데 당보 깨지 당보라 빵자당 님보니 투 니바델라 님보고 코로 갈송마 디기 민라 동알 최셰바스네 레숭게도와 어디데 다디 당본일이 드비 감기 동알덴바 데 빵자당 빵 님보 덴투와 되게 셰바 되게 명라 라비오레 송아레 아니 니바델라 따단지 도당데 직바레 동알라 제수 셰베 소바당 동알라 제수 셰바세 디캄 공마이 동알데 게 파체 멜람다 남로 람니레스네 송아레도 맞어
So what are these 16 moments of the wisdom of cognition and acceptance? First, we have the acceptance of cognizing the attributes of suffering, then the cognition of the attributes of suffering, the ensuing acceptance of cognition concerning suffering, the ensuing cognition concerning suffering. This makes four moments or four stages of the cognizing of the attributes of suffering. So 4 moments that relate to the seeing of the truth of suffering, and then the same kind of force. So acceptance, cognition, ensuing cognition and ensuing acceptance. Those 4 then apply also equally to the other 3 noble truths. So ensuing the acceptance and cognition of the attributes of origin, the ensuing acceptance, ensuing cognition concerning origin, the same for regarding cessation, and the same for regarding the path. Thus it is said that these 16 arise. So each of the 4 noble truths is realized in these 4 stages or 4 aspects of acceptance, cognition, ensuing acceptance, and ensuing cognition. And so when we look at what they are then actually referring to each, paragraph 1216 reads, in this regard, there are numerous opinions, such as holding that each subsequent moment after the former has arisen, take the former as the object and cognizes it. Yet the insight into the 4 truths concerning attributes that comprise the desire realms are called acceptance and cognitions of the attributes, while the 4 of the upper realms are called ensuing acceptance and cognition. So actually, when we look at the 4 noble truths, and we first take suffering here as the example, on the path of seeing, when the truth of suffering is being apprehended, the first part, the first moment that is described here is the acceptance of cognizing the attributes of suffering. So suffering has been described in terms of the world, the vessel, and sentient beings. And so when this truth is being apprehended, then both the individual as well as the general characteristics of the truth of suffering, of the phenomena that are described by the truth of suffering, need to be cognized. They need to be known, actually. And first of all, one needs to have the acceptance to truly look at these attributes. So the individual attributes of the phenomena that constitute the truth of suffering is that each phenomena that is enumerated as the world or the vessel, the world or sentient beings, can be seen to not truly be established in the way that it appears, because we can break it down further and further until we come to these smallest indivisible particles, or even further. So that is when we analyze each particular phenomenon, then it is just a conglomeration of limitless parts without there being one course, one solid thing that we could identify as the thing itself without constituents. And the general characteristics of the phenomena of the truth of suffering, so generally applicable to all of them, is that they are impermanent, that they are by nature suffering, and that they are without a self, and that they're empty. The 4 characteristics of the truth of suffering. So these characteristics need to be understood, and when we don't know the truth of suffering, these are the 2 things that we cannot see, that the general and the specific characteristics. So we grasp 2 things to be truly established, a way that they appear as a particular thing, and when we don't apprehend the general characteristics, then we actually, when we don't realize that that the phenomena of the truth of suffering are impermanent, then we grasp to them, we develop attachment, we develop fear, and so on. So misapprehension leads to all the disturbing emotions that are the discards when seeing the truth of suffering. Now, on the path of seeing, one comes to know these characteristics directly. One comes to a direct insight of those, and being able to accept this direct look at how things really are, what the truth of suffering really describes. So to directly being able to look at impermanence, to be able to accept the fact of impermanence when it is directly perceived as acceptance, and of the characteristics of the truth of suffering. And one way that we also already spoke about this is to talk about the path without impediments. And this means that there are no more impediments, there are no more obstacles to seeing these general and specific characteristics directly. So nothing is there that can keep one from looking at the specific characteristics, looking at the particles that make up a coarse phenomena, nor the general characteristics of impermanence and so forth. And one can endure that, one can accept that and have trust in those facts. So here we speak specifically about the characteristics of, or the attributes of, the truth of suffering in the, as it applies to the desire realm. And so when we look at the truth of suffering in the desire realm, then one develops this acceptance. That means that really the obstacles or the non-conducive circumstances, all the discards, are being met with and discarded. But not only has one reached the path of no impediment where the acceptance arises, the subsequent continuation of holding that kind of perception, of being able to continuously be free from anything that would obstruct that insight, is then classified as the path of liberation. So one way that we can look at this is that the acceptance of the attributes is likened to something hot and something cold. So hot water and cold water come together. Water is a little bit difficult, but there's hot and there's cold. And then one will be stronger than the other, and then one wins. And then that's the only one that's left. So for the discards and the acceptance, the realization on the path of no impediment, this means that there are the discards and then there's the inside, and when they meet, then acceptance describes the winning of the inside, so the discards lose. And so that would mean, for example, with regard to the truth of suffering and its characteristics, its attributes, it would mean that on one side we have the understanding that the individual characteristics of phenomena are that they are to be broken down in smaller and smaller pieces, that they're made up of subtle particles, while the other view in our mind would be that there's a coarse thing. And so these two meet, and then on the path of on the stage of acceptance, so the path of no impediment, the view of things to be not established, but being a conglomeration of smaller parts wins. then the idea that they're one course phenomena, like one single entity that has its own nature, will be gone. And so that clash and the winning of the correct view is acceptance, and then to continuously be able to uphold that kind of view. So the continuation of that realization is then the path of liberation. So that is the cognition of the attributes of suffering, what is identified as the second moment, or the second aspect of the 16 aspects. And yeah, so they cannot, the opposing factor cannot be eliminated anymore. The opposing factor cannot eliminate those understandings anymore because of the direct realization. And so we were speaking here about the desire realm, truth of suffering aspects, and the ensuing acceptance and the ensuing cognition, they then refer to the applicable aspects in the higher realms.
대신도 군중 최세 대니보디 도감지 군중 덴발라 록슈 방신 드네 거기 내룩 통화 강인바테레스 다나세 군중 제세시바데 감공마이 베나 통남제 방자 방신 아니 디나나 니도와 군중 최수 최세스 디 도함지 군중기 덴바라 로컬 슈마 방신 군중 덴바게 넬루강인바 통와스 다데 최수당 최세 제시데 단지 약간 동알된 뭐가라 잡혀지 붙이정데 아니다 군중 제수 제세시바데 양감 공마이 군중기 안에 방자 방신 안에 독자 이시 문도 줄바스 안들이 가는 최직 신바데 단계 나와나 신제 직대로와 남 파체 멜람당 남돌람스 파체 멜람당 남돌람 라이티오디 다나시 고바 대시당 람제 대시 청마양 도당지 버레스 통남 이시 규제 주룩스인데 어떤 조제스 개물들라.
So the ensuing acceptance of cognition concerning suffering and the ensuing cognition concerning suffering are then the same kind of, follows the same principle, but for that form and formless realms. And then, so that means that the mistaken engagements that constitute the disguides towards the truth of suffering are in the higher realms, in the form and formless realms, are not engaged in anymore. And so that applies equally for all the discards on the path of seeing. So the next come then the acceptance and cognition of the attributes of origin. So here we're just summarizing them a little bit. The acceptance and the cognition of the attributes of origin are then the same path of no impediment and the path of liberation in the desire realm with regard to the truth of origin. And then the ensuing acceptance and ensuing cognition concerning origin refers to the path of to the acceptance and cognition, so to the path of no impediment and the path of liberation in the form and formless realms, in the higher realms. And then the same also applies to the to cessation, and the same for also apply to the path, to the truth of the path. So that gives us the number of 16. And in every case, it's eliminating the discards and realizing or giving rise to the wisdom, which is that which needs to be realized. So realizing the nature of these truths.
대양 ngama ngama shebe soba la tenne chima sheba 아니 sheba la tenne jesu sheba la tenne jesu soba jesu dang jesu la soba ngama la tenne chima ngama yulje chima dewu yang tende yuldu cheje sheba so ngama la tenne chima 중계레스 남네 tende 되긴 tende 요레스 숭아레 두마 요장스 조데 가인 슈나 벽함게 뒤비 쳐라 덴바시 통완남라 최게 쇠셰당스 페나 뒤비 감기 뒤샤베게 둥알 덴바게 넬루 통겐되게 명라 아니 쇠셰스는 지라 둥알라 최셰베 소바당 둥알라 최셰바 스니들라고요 숭아레 아니 감 공만 얘기 안에 배차산 덴바시기 넬루 람나라도 양 페나 둥알 덴바데게 넬루데 감 공만 갑라 셰바당 아니 어딘지 명라 아니 제수 당 제시스는 어디에서는 셰줄라스 오늘 조데 다 소바스 망불리기도 하야 강나 어디 소바스인데 강들에 람나 조데 덴방 무슨도 똑베 냠보데 명라라비레스 디데 덴방 무슨도 똑바세디 갈라다 랑단지 체니지 통기를 했은 단지 쉬임바 온데 랑단지 체니 랑단지 체니데 마동나 아니 가상만 아주 디 덴바시 감라 라나수도 방자 망부여와 따왕아당 동알 덴바 통이 갑라 방자데 가리레스나 따왕아다 따밍아레라나 다디 랑게치 체니데 마동나다 디 따왕아다 따밍아이 왕나 두기로와 안타나신 덴바라나 소소라 방자레레레레와 오늘에데 랑다치 체니데 덴바데 무슨도 똑통나 디밍라 쇠발라기레스 디디 방자데 방투기레스 디디 갑라 파르체멜람 parchemelama lapires timingla ani di samegi sherama lapires timingla ani yang shepa singje lipido aya kanla pena chusu dang chu shepa singde parchemelam dires ani yang jesu shepa dang jesu 뭐래 제수 시비 소바다 제수 시바 승 중에도 어디디 명라드네 남돌 남스네 동알 추에시 바승이들어 동알 추에시 바승 동알 소바승의 발체 멜람레스 동알 추에시 바승에 되더니 남돌 남스나다 탁심밤 다딜레 도스 모투네 람디가나 모투네 단네 토바서라 어디든지 인송하래도
In this regard, there are numerous opinions, such as holding that each subsequent moment after the former has arisen take the form as its object and cognizes it. So there are different opinions here and different ways of explaining this. One is, for example, that the 16 moments would constitute a gradual progression where the previous moment constitutes the object which is then cognized by the subsequent moment. So when we have the 4 moments when perceiving the truth of suffering, then the acceptance of cognizing the attributes of suffering would become the object, which is then cognized by the cognition of the attributes of suffering, so giving rise to that as its result, and then the subsequent acceptance would take that as its object, would be the result of that, and so on. But that is only one way that it is described. The important point for us to understand here is, yet the insights into the 4 truths concerning attributes that comprise the desire realms are called acceptance and cognition of the attributes, while the 4 of the upper realms are called ensuing acceptance and cognition. So the way that we should understand it here is that these 4 attributes for each of the 4 noble truths, making a total of 16, can be applied to the desire realm and the upper realm. So acceptance and cognition refer to the acceptance and cognition of the general and specific characteristics of the truth of suffering, of the truth of origin, and so forth in the desire realm. And so the acceptance and the cognition, they refer to that which really directly perceives the nature of that of the particular truth in the desire realm, and with that then the discards and that we enumerated for the particular truths then are discarded. So really this refers here to the knowledge or to the realization, to the cognition of the nature of the 4 noble truths, first in the desire realm, and then the subsequent ones refer to the same for the discarding of the discards in the form and formless realms. So these are the ensuing acceptance and cognition. And when we speak here about acceptance, we need to understand that as referring to the undefiling discriminating knowledge. Acceptance refers to the undefiling discriminating knowledge, the remedy for directly realizing the truths, which is the path without impediment. So when we talk about acceptance here, it's really the antidote, that which overpowers the discards. So it is exactly that, the direct realization of that which directly realizes the true nature of the 4 noble truths. And that refers to the individual and the general character, or to the individual or the general characteristics of each of the noble truths. And so if one doesn't know those characteristics, if one hasn't directly realized those, when the wisdom then knows those has not directly arisen in one's mind stream, then one will be subject to the discards. One will be one will mistakenly engage in the truth of suffering, for example, through the discards. So the 5 views and the 5 non-views, one will follow them. And so it's that cognition or that realization which constitutes the antidote against those discards that we identify as the acceptance. So if we can eliminate those discards, the mistaken engagements in the truth of suffering in the desire realm, that means the discards are gone. That's because of the development of acceptance, which is the antidote, which is the wisdom, the undefiling, discriminating knowledge that is the remedy against the discards. So when that is developed, the discards have no chance anymore. And so it's the undefiling wisdom that arises. And so that's when the antidote, like the functioning of the antidote or the arising of the antidote that then discards the discards is what we refer to as the path of no impediment. So that's acceptance. That's the path of no impediment. And then when the discards are gone and one can continue on that path, so in the subsequent continuation, then this we refer to as the point of, or the stage of cognition, that is identified as cognition, and that is the path of liberation. So it's the continuation here.
주주보 디다 림진도 깨와 당선 통남이시 교주 주주등도 당보 안에 동알 최시비 수밖에 디젤라 동알 최시바 디젤라 동알 제수시바 디젤라 동알 제수 동알 제수 시비 수바당 동알 제수 시바라서 안에 된저께 양 디젤라 군중기 디시께 양 디젤라 람게 양 디젤라 고바 안디젤라 람게 센텐데스네 덴바시고 되게디 림바 제 된조 탐제 데다 림진도 지게젤라 지 딘데스네 이시데 기기레스네 딘데 라빈직 당스 딘데 도바 당스 양제 직자도 결와서 디 통랑 이시케주 주주보 용조데 안에 직자도 냠도 통남 토바다 냠돌라 계기 요바당스 양 당보 안에 동알 최시비 소바 군중 최시비 소바 고바 최시비 소바 람 최시비 소바 안디첼라 신에 동알 최시비 라라서 딘데 림바 신도 양 딘데 샤게 딘데 망보지 다 배차되지 나라 통교열에도 송하래 딘데 시바가 여장스 때 매방을 뭐체 做 랑룩라 룩소데라 간연순 최 탐제 다음에 되는 것은도 또 비시랍기 최 탐제스는 덴바시기 뒤비 최 탐제 로아 디기 내룩데 무슨도 또 비시랍기 있어 자와조비 깨징마 디기 있어 감숨기 딘시 최니 똑발라 조바르 똑발라서 조바르 된 탐제 최 탐제게 카시게 내룩도 토남 갑라 카시게 내루마도 갈리 또 림바신 또 덴데스 마레 숭게레 제 탐제 조바르 똑발라서 독체 주주데 에와 잠도 시바니 된란네시 독체 스디 갑라 동알 덴바이 동알 덴바게 되네 내룩 통회 차당 군중 덴바게 내룩 통회 차당 람게 덴바 다나신 고비 덴바 덴조기 라나수주기 내룩 통회 차데 라나수주 록슈 덴조 로바르 슈바당 덴조 지바도 빵와당 디게 디우 문도 주르바 베차샤나 가나네 동알 최시비 수바 토비 차당 동알라 최시비 차당 동알라 제수시비 수바 토비 차당 동알라 제수시비 차 다나시 군주나 어딘데기 독차기 에와이고네 토나미 시케지 주룩스네 샤바레스 수마레도아 셰바니 된란네신 오네 케바르도 초 탐제 동리 조절도 식비 태칭기 룰란에 대달 체 태반이도스 초 탐제 숭도 되는라 초레레 동리 통 레레 갈레 통에 계자 마레스 초 탐제 태바침베 루술라 춘이게 된바 통송나 탐제 통도기라 데인디갈라 초 탐제 동리 조절도 식비 태칭기 룰란에 아니 den신일루 탐제 족발라 똑라 아니 독차기 군이 주주 샤바레라바데 하정기 태바 외신 태바 네 도당디 중선 대바도 도선 하정 태바니도
So cognition refers to the path of liberation of that. That's what we had. And then paragraph 1218 reads, there are several approaches as to whether these 16 arise successively or arise simultaneously. There are as well other ways of defining them. So there are actually many different ways that the 16 moments are explained. One way is what we have already seen, that it's a gradual process. So some say that one first develops the acceptance of cognizing the attributes of suffering, then from that comes the cognition of the attributes of suffering, from that comes the ensuing acceptance of the cognition of the concerning suffering, and then comes the ensuing cognition concerning suffering, the same for all four noble truths, right? So that it's a gradual progression where one first realizes goes through the 4 stages of the truth of suffering, then one goes through the 4 stages of the truth of origin, then through the 4 stages of the truth of cessation, and then the 4 stages of the truth of the path. Another way of enumerating it is that all of those arise simultaneously. That's another way to talk about it, that it's not describing 16 actual different moments, but it's that all these acceptances and cognitions arise simultaneously. And then another way of enumerating a gradual progression is actually that it goes sideways. So that first there is the acceptance of cognizing the attributes of suffering, then there's the acceptance of cognizing the attributes of origin, then is the acceptance of the cognizing of the attributes of cessation, and then from that follows the acceptance of cognizing the attributes of the path. Then starts with the cognitions, so then comes the cognition of the attributes of suffering, then comes the cognition of the attributes of origin, and so on. So that's yet another way that some people explain the gradual development of the 16 aspects. But what then Mipam Rinpoche explains as the actual meaning, as that which is propounded by Mipam Rinpoche's own tradition, is the following. However, the actual meaning rests with the viewpoint that perfect realization of the nature of the 4 truths of the 3 realms is simply being divided into 16 aspects based on that single moment of a completed act of discriminating knowledge, which directly realizes the lack of self-entity in all phenomena. So what is described and how we should understand this according to Mipam Rinpoche is that actually the path of seeing describes the full realization of all phenomena. All phenomena constitute everything that is included in the 4 noble truths. So the complete realization of the abiding mode of all phenomena, of the true nature of Dhamata, of all phenomena, then is described here. That the actual realization is just the realization of the nature of phenomena. and which includes everything, all the four truths, everything that's included in the four truths. And it's not that it's actually a slow or gradual process of not having realized some of it, but then later the one realizes the rest of it, or that there is a gradual progression of that realization in that meditative absorption, in that realization. So according to that, according to Mipam Rinpoche here, the direct realization of the nature of phenomena is like one complete action. But when we look at the different things that we can identify later on of what is being realized, so we conceptually then can look at different aspects that are being realized. So there's a way of breaking it down, not in the moment of the realization itself, but like when we conceptualize what has happened based on the different categories of phenomena, then we can divide it into these 16 different aspects that have been realized. So looking at the mistaken engagements that have been eliminated, looking at the manifestation of the different cognitions. This is a way of breaking it down, right? The path of no impediment refers to the abandonment of the mistaken engagements, of the discards. And then the cognition refers to the manifestation of the aspect of the cognition, that which has been realized. And so it's a way of breaking this down to the different realms and for the Four Noble Truths as they constitute all phenomena, that we come up with these 16 things, the 16 aspects that are being realized. So especially when we talk here about all phenomena, this means that not each phenomena is realized individually. The nature of all phenomena is being seen in that absorption by that realization of a lack of self-entity. So it's the truth that is being realized here in itself, and then we can just like divide it based on the different classifications of things and different aspects of abandoning discards or the cognition aspect of a particular thing, and that's why we have 16 aspects. So the understanding here that Mipam Rinpoche presents is very different than that we have seen in the successive the approaches to the 16 moments or aspects of the truth of to the path of seeing.
wenjang denshi namba chingi tuje gi sherab las tuje gi sherab se demba shi re sine jango wa demba shi gi rana susu gi pangja tiba la soba khande imbe tindege pangja ha ko de yoba tene demba shi gi re shindu lam jogo wa ombo tulbo ta dinde tuje dinde gi sherab la ne yang 당보 동갈덴바 시 동갈덴베 방자 방 데네 군중덴바 시 군중덴바기 방자 데네 고비덴바 데네 람기덴바 림진도 깨네 덴바 시기 시네 시가르기 넬루 칼레 림진도 통신 안에 당보 동갈덴바네 짬네 타마 람기덴바기 넬루 통통바도 그 자와데데스네 조케 딘데양 유레스네 송레 다데 타직도 다지단 매방을 무치게 야 강라 되바데 대한테 인스는 숨으려 마도 양 저제 된조라 양 림바 신도 딘데스네 방케 통남갑라 아니 자와 속인 딘데 유스는 숨으려도 유도
So in particular, this is even more appropriate in the Mahayana system of perceiving all phenomena as emptiness devoid of constructs. Nonetheless, as for the discriminating knowledge with the constructs of the aspects of the Four Truths, there also exists a complete act of insight into the Four Truths after having progressively engendered certainty based on the stages of suffering, its cause, which is the origin, the cessation of that, and the path. So even though in the Mahayana we have this realization, we speak about the insight in the nature of all phenomena, that is emptiness, devoid of all constructs, we can also look, and that would constitute the complete act of realization, where these aspects are individually lined out, not where these aspects can be classified later on, but there's also a way of talking about discriminating knowledge, which has constructs, so it has conceptual constructs of breaking, of a gradual progression through the understanding of the Four Noble Truths, and that also describes the completion of one act, so the moment of the completion of one act, where then we can identify the coming to know and then abandoning the discards of the truth of suffering, and then coming to know the truth of origin, and then abandon the discards with regard to the truth of suffering, and so on. So that gradually all the discards are being abandoned. So there is also that way of speaking about one moment of completing an act that actually involves the conceptual different stages of gradual abandonment. But for the completion of it, we still speak about one moment of completing an act.
통람 예값들을 셰랍게 젠게스 다 통람 이셰 게지 주루데 통웨 셰랍게 젠게스 춘이게 덴바데 덴바시게 넬룩데 시발라 텐네 쳬라 쳬게 쳬게 넬룩 통웨 쳬게 맥둘 매진스 맥둘 매진스나 나지 도차 셰당 다다나 잔윤된 저요와 어딘조든 좀 매진스 아니 디 메발라 때네 되네 숭와당 짐바 라소바 된저양 메 디마단 달와레 계소 셰 숭데스 아니 쇠반남네 세 되네 다조데디 통방게 방자된저 뻥와 녀몽바 메비 차나 둘메바스 셰반남네 디류갑델라 숭제 메베 되네 이셰 랑세 나네 이셰게 랑신 나네 지마단 잘와스 셰제 지바단 잘와스 지바단 잘와 셰양 디밍라이 통남제 이시되게 연대남 디밍라 최 통와스 춘이게 덴바 통와스 숨니레 갈와스 다 덴바시게 넬룩 덴조라 아네 넬룩 출신도 통용데 갑델라 베나 가르레 베나 동알 덴바 란단치 쳔니 인남 민남스네 랑게지 쳔니 인남 민남스네 덴데기 숨니단 갈와세다 랑게 쳔니데 둘도 주바 짬레 통화 짬마도 라방 뭐지 메스 데네 최탐제 동알 덴발라 삼로다나 미다 동알 동비 랑신 인 삼베 덴데 숨니 태좀레 달와제 차데레스 인 샥샥라오지 신딩 미조바 신게 감랍나양 랑게 춘이기 덴바데 통 대유갑라 아니 신게 강랍나 디 왕라 두게 말에 신딩 미조바스 뜸베 덴발레 신게 찌와르 메뉴바 람신지 뗀송나 딜레 람신도 드에도 딘데 용게 말에 미티와스 최남라 미직바 토바스 최남라 미직바 세디갈라 초 그런 게 내룩들 이체기래서 땅 아주 직송나다 추억이 단단히 코르비 충당이 왕다 두개라 다다 미직과 쓰리가라 출비 엉덩 매도와지 덴바시기 내룩 강림바디 토라 두개래 시송데스
In this context of the path of seeing, the statement, the eye of knowledge perceives the truth of Dhammata, while the Dhamma eye concerning Dhammas arises devoid of dust and free from impurities, meant that the acceptances are devoid of dust and the cognitions are free from impurity. So when we speak about this eye here, the eye of knowledge, this refers to the perception of the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths. So the 16 moments here, or the 16 aspects. And really, this is when the truth of Dhammata is being perceived directly. So it's the eye of knowledge that perceives the truth of Dhammata directly. So previously, one was not able to clearly perceive the truth. One was not able to clearly perceive suchness that was obscured by dust and impurities. And now, being free of all misapprehension of perceived and perceiver, being free from the misapprehension towards phenomena, knowing the true nature of the Four Noble Truths means that one has completely abandoned in that perception, in the direct perception, one has gotten rid of anything that prevents the clear and pure seeing. So the eye is free of any dust and any impurities that would prevent the direct seeing, the image that is given here. And so, moreover, it is taught that because of having acquired special qualities, such as gaining faith in the three jewels by having understood them based on realizing Dhammata through individual self-cognitions, as well as attaining the discipline that delights the noble ones, one then perceives the Dhamma, transcends doubt, does not depend on others, does not become fettered by some doctrine other than the Buddhas, and achieves fearlessness concerning the Dhamma. So because of that direct insight, the clear seeing without any impediments, and the wisdom that arises, that realizes the nature of all phenomena, because of that correct seeing, because of not conceptualizing and grasping to the perceiver and the perceived and all of that, then actually no doubt will arise, for example, anymore. So one has perceived the Dhamma for what it is. For example, one has seen the nature of the truth of suffering. And so having seen the individual and common characteristics of the truth of suffering directly, then no doubt will arise with regard to those characteristics anymore. One will not have the doubt, are these phenomena impermanent or are they not impermanent? Because one has had the direct experience of it. One has had the direct insight into it. So all doubts will be gone. Is this maybe this is a phenomena that exists as a course phenomena, maybe not. No, having seen that phenomena are the conglomeration, like that coarse objects are the conglomeration of more and more subtle parts. That kind of doubt, is it an coarse object established in its own right or not? That kind of doubt will not arise anymore if one had the direct insight. So when one has seen those characteristics directly, then one will be free of doubt with regard to them. And then also, no matter what someone else will say, one will not waver in one's conviction, one's realization. If one has directly seen the truth, if one has directly experienced that, then no matter what someone else might tell one, they cannot convince one of something else, of the opposite. So one will also not go on another path. Here it says, become fettered by some doctrine other than the Buddha's. That will not happen. One will not go on another path because one has seen the truth of that path, right? One has seen that this is the correct path, and one has seen the nature of the Four Noble Truths. So why would one go to on a path that contradicts that which one has seen as the truth? And so the final statement here is that one achieves fearlessness concerning the Dharma. So while that means that one develops complete trust with regard to the path, with regard to the Dharma. If one is afraid of what the Dharma means, that means that one is confused, and so that's the confused appearances of samsara. But if one has seen the nature of the Dharma, the truth itself, then there is no fear with regard to those anymore, because it's not the confused state of samsara, of misapprehending them, where one then can develop fear with regard to them. But with a direct insight, then one can completely trust and base oneself on the Four Noble Truths themselves, without any fear with regarding to those.
네, 신양 연된 소소랑 릭베 춘니기 춘니 응원도 제베 네 곤조숨라 양이 금진 시베 보내 대바 토비레스 파반남나 예베 사미게 출림 토바소 연된 개발제 망보 토비치로 다 통남 연된 된소 인송하네 람데니 춘니게 덴바스 다 덴바시게 넬룩데 무슨도 식베 최 탐제 랍도 제베 셰랍 조르 겨베 다 장축이 양나 되는 생인데 단 잡는 지그레 송안에 데 장축 양나 되는 다 마온 레기도 최라 남제게 장축이 양라스 최랍도 남바르 제베 장축이 양라스 신장 장축이 양라스 땅념 장축이 양라스 젠바 장축이 양라 준주 장축이 양라 가와 장축이 양라 띵엔진 장축이 양라 디랑신진 인스다 무진전노.
So, because of having acquired special qualities, such as gaining faith in the three jewels, by having understood them based on realizing Dhammata through individual self-cognitions, as well as attaining the discipline that delights the noble ones. So because of what we have seen before, these qualities that I've just spoken about will arise because of the direct insight, because of having gained the special qualities, because of having gained faith in the three jewels and to teach specifically the Dharma, because one has realized the Dhammata, then a lot of specific qualities arise. These then one develops the transcendence of doubt and so forth. And then even more specifically, qualities that are being developed are this path of seeing possesses the nature of the 7 Bodhi factors. The primary factor being the knowledge of fully discerning phenomena that directly perceives the truth of Dharmata. So the path of seeing then has like 7 factors of enlightenment that constitute this path of seeing, meaning there are 7 factors that are being part of the practice of the path of seeing. And the foremost of those is really discriminating knowledge that sees, that directly perceives Dharmata. That's of course the main point. But alongside with it comes also the factor of enlightenment, which is samadhi, meditative absorption, and equanimity, but also pliancy and mindfulness, diligence, and joy. So there are these 7 factors, these 7 factors of enlightenment that describe the practice of the path of seeing and the development of those qualities.
Tene komlamne kombilamne zo de tonglam tobe chesula ta tonglam top sarjete motune da komlamdere di gongdu najur kombate se tonglam tobe chesula tene lam gongma denzo 출신도 못하는 냠len chawati dila nabgeus sungone kombate kandi komlam di kola keje shewe kabla jigdin patang tumunggi komlam shewa jigdang tumin jigdin le de basne ni years ta tangbo jigdin bi lam ki komlam shewa de kanda ensena samden shidang sumi shi dingen zen kede stati mala samden tangbo niba la suma shewa ani sume namga 타에 남셰 타에 지암에 봐 유미미미 수미시게 띵인진 된조여로 된조들라 직딤 바당 투몽비 kumlam스네 납교여 선수만에 다 된조데 직딤비 kumlam 된조데네 일라 집어 듄승이지여 디 고네 소소 아니 띵인진들 뇽버 주비를 냠샤 안 남겨여레스 주바인데스
The path of cultivation means to cultivate the higher practices after having attained the path of seeing. So when we speak about the path of cultivation, then this is really the continuation of the path of seeing. Once the path of seeing has been attained, so the realization has arisen, the continuation of that, the further cultivation and the continuation of that realization is the entirety of the path of cultivation. And so then one continuously practices the higher practices. So specifically to the 5 paths, as they're described as Dharma practice, then the path of cultivation refers to the continuation, to the cultivation of the insight that has arisen in the path of seeing. That now here, we actually will look at the path of cultivation in 2 different ways. One is the common way, and then the specific, the special supermundane path. So it has 2 aspects. The explanation here has 2 aspects. First, the path of cultivation common to the mundane levels, and second, the special supermundane path of cultivation. So the first one, so first we speak about the path of cultivation just in a general manner in terms of the mundane paths. That does not apply to the supermundane, to the world transcending paths, but just the worldly ones that describes the practice of the dhyanas and the meditative absorptions of the formless realm. So they're the four dhyanas, they're the four meditative absorptions, and so first dhyana, second dhyana, third dhyana, fourth dhyana, and then also the perception of infinite space, infinite consciousness, conception of nothing whatsoever, and neither present or absence of perception. These are the four stages of the four levels of meditative absorption of the formless realm. They are being discussed first. So these are not the part, or not the path of the noble beings, but they're the common path for the worldly, the mundane paths of cultivation. And then we move on to the special supramundane paths, then what we usually understand as the path of cultivation.
나서 대 곰람데라 직된당 투몽당 투몽만 직된에 대바스니 곰람니 여바 따티링 딘데스나 하고도 되네 통람 갑라 답변나 가상데 초글람 갑라 dimbanyawa 샤파시 양답봉와시 주주리 공바시 레베레 라바나 신진에 따단다로 통람 감데라 장축이 야나 든 생지 딘데스 냠nen도 선된제지 침바레 아니 통남기 이시 기직 주주 생지 뭐시고 외레스 디링델라다 통남 이시 기직 주주 된조 명라 아니 바르체 멜란다 남도 라마 라게요와 어디데스네 따디링델레 침바레스 디루 참샤게 모멜람 쉐.
So, what do we need to know for today's class? We have concluded with the fact that there are actually two discussions that are going to follow now. The discussion of the mundane path of cultivation, and then the path of the supramundane path of cultivation. So that we have to be clear about. Then also something we have to be clear about is that the path of seeing has equally 7 factors, or 7 practices, seven bodhi factors, as they're named here, factors of enlightenment, that's just in the same way that we have seen the 4 applications of mindfulness, the 4 things to endeavors, and the 4 feet of miracles, like those categories of the path of accumulation. And then we also saw similar something for the path of joining. So here on the path of seeing, we spoke about these 7 bodhi factors, and specifically something we have to be clear about are these 16 moments of the path of seeing, what they're referring to, how they can be described, and how we refer to them as the paths of no impediment, as well as the path of liberation. So how all of that happens. That's what we need to know for today. And let's stop here for today.
참발람바웨 진다라 켐바 당군도 상본데 양데셴데 데다이 군제 제소 달로지 개와엔데다 탐제 람동 두숨 셰베 잘와 탐제 제모와 간라 촌도 남바데 다제 개베 자와엔데 군장 상보 제신 람동 오바란제 스남데 탐제 세바 Tomne nyembe chanam pamche ne jenga nanche balak chubai sibe chole njowa njolvara shoke wa ndiye jewo kun sunam yeshe chozo shi sunam yeshe le chong wa tamba kuni Tombara sho lo chu so njolvara chenje labdo sono chu labdo njolvara chenje labdo Lam Tulba Selvara Chinje Lamdos Tulba Yeshe So Charvara Chinje Lamdos
Also,
Chela Jayong.
Okay, so I said I promised I would be available today after class. If there were questions left from yesterday, just give me 2 seconds. I'll be back in a few seconds. If you have any questions. Hi. Sorry. Dominic, you have a question?
Yeah, so just a quick one. I think today what was really interesting for me was just hearing that. Sorry, what was really interesting for me today was hearing that acceptance or the path of without impediments is synonymous with wisdom or dhammata. But then I don't quite get then what is the path of liberation if if yeah, so if those first set of synonyms hold, then what would the equivalence be for the path of liberation?
So the way I understand it from the perspective of Mipam Rinpoche, right? So it's different for the other ways of explaining it, but actually it's a way of breaking it down. You remember how we spoke about the development of the 10 bhumis last year? We always spoke about the abandonment of the discards and the realization, but really in the meditative absorption, that distinction is not made. But so the focus would be it's not really two different moments according to Mipam, but it's just two different angles to look at it. In the way that one is really where the antidote, which is the wisdom, crashes the discards, and the other one is like, wow, the antidote is there. Like the one is the antidote's function or the wisdom's function of eliminating the antidotes, and the other one is the emergence of the wisdom itself.
Mm.
And if we break it down, then the emergence of the wisdom also means that there are no more antidotes, so that can then continue, right? It's not going to drop again once it's done its function. So that's why it's also mentioned that it's the continuation of the arising of the wisdom. That's the path of liberation.
So one very quick follow-up question. It's just then is this also equated with so this I'm just trying to sort out the synonyms in my mind, right? So acceptance, cognition is paired or matched or mapped onto path without impediment, path of liberation, right? Were there other and then which is also mapped to so those are the main synonyms, right? Acceptance, cognition, path of without impediment, path of liberation, and then of course arising of wisdom, continuation of wisdom.
Also, the elimination of discards and non-engagement in no more wrong engagements were involved too, and then mapping that on the different truths and on the different realms. So the first two are for the desire realm, and then the subsequent ones address the discards of the
Form
higher
and
realms.
formless.
Yeah.
But that was just like one interpretation of the whole or
No,
one
that also always
explanation.
it's always the case.
Okay.
But
Okay.
for some, it's a gradual thing. For MIPAM, it's just like, we're breaking down discards because we talked about the discards like that before. And so, of course, when we talk about getting rid of all the discards, this means we're getting rid of the desire realm discards. That's not enough. We also get rid of the form realm discards and the formless realm discards because they're not synonymous, right? They're not the same discards.
So he refers to that as subsequent acceptance, subsequent cognition.
Yeah, and so for the Shravakayana, you would go through it gradually. You first get rid of starting out as a human, you would get rid of the desire realm discards with regard to the truth of suffering first, and then the same for that. So one opinion would be the same then for the form realm and the formless realm, and the other opinion would be to go vertically in our chart, right? If you have it in mind, would be going vertically with the discards. First, all the acceptances, then all the cognitions, then the subsequent acceptances, and then the subsequent